Like a pretty good weather report, and I think that probably makes our next guest, Jack Hemingway, very happy. He seems like a man who thrives on good weather and the environment. Let me tell you a little bit about Jack Hemingway. He's the eldest son of Ernest Hemingway, the great writer. They say he's the world's greatest fly fisherman. Now, he probably modestly would say one of the greatest. He is a successful businessman. He left the stock market to go out to Idaho. He is the father of 3 talented daughters, Margot, Marielle, and Muffet Hemingway, and I welcome you here.
Oh, thanks.
Nice to have you, Jack.
It's good to be here.
You know, I get all kinds of information on guests, and I learn about them in different ways. For example, I read TV Guide about you this morning, Lauren. That's where I got the idea you were traveling by yourself. But I got such an interesting biography on this man. You have had such a life. I'd like to just take a couple minutes to stop and chat with you about some of the places you've been. Okay?
Sure.
The first 11 years of your life with your father, Ernest Hemingway, in Paris. Just in a stream of consciousness way, what are some of the things you still remember about your boyhood there?
Bill, it's so, you know, I get asked a lot about, you know, what was it like to be in this sort of very important period, you know, literary period, you know, the great lost generation and all that. I was a little kid.
Yeah, who cares? You know. Edith Sitwell, who's that? You know, you don't need her.
Well, you know, there were all these people that a fellow, I used to get stories told to me by, you know, by famous writers who would be left at the house to babysit with me, you know.
Who were some of your babysitters?
Oh, gosh, I think Archie McLeish, who was a great, you know, who was a poet laureate in the United States at one time. Not poet laureate.
Did he bounce you on his knee and read poetry to you?
No, his wife did, you know. So I made up my first poem, which was, you know, a one-liner. La belle chemise de Madame McLeish. It doesn't really rhyme.
Well, you spoke, what, French and German before you learned English?
Oh, yeah. Well, I went over there, you know, I was born in Toronto and went over to France when I was 3 months old.
Cool.
And stayed there till I was 11.
So and they were all characters. I mean, everybody was a fantastic character, so it must have seemed like the...
Well, you know, it was great fun. And, you know, my father was and this is one of the things that I always kind of... he's never portrayed as being funny, and he was a very funny, funny, happy, you know, lively person, fun to be around and exciting. And he was my hero, you know, as a little kid, and, you know, until I was...
What about him was your hero? Like, my father was my hero because he was a big athlete, and he was a great swimmer, and that's what I remembered about him. But your father was in some way, it was obviously, his literary talents are
well, I never thought about literary talents.
That's what I mean. What made him your hero, your dad?
Well, I hate to say it because, you know, people are not into macho, or maybe they're coming back to it now with all the violence in films, you know. But,
a lot of people are.
But yeah, those fellows down in Washington were. But frankly, what I personally, I did, you know, I liked the fact that he was a hell of a boxer. And he'd been a sparring partner for Harry Greb,
so you,
and he was a good. In fact, I was
the old man get in the ring.
I was a sparring partner for some fighters that he had down in Key West.
Yeah. What was your best punch?
I never had a very good one, actually.
All right, now I want to move forward because there are a lot of different places we could stop. During World War II, you were captured by the Germans, and you made 3 attempts to escape. Tell us a little bit about that experience of your life.
Well, the first mistake was getting captured.
Yeah.
You know that.
How did they get you? Where were they? Where were you?
Well, I was in Alsace, or not on the edge of Alsace, in the Vosges Mountains, and I was with an OSS unit assigned to one of the infantry divisions, and we'd infiltrate people through the lines with a 300 set, you know, radio, and they'd watch traffic and try to locate enemy command posts and this sort of thing. And one time we'd been doing this stuff at night, and my boss, who, I don't want to say he wasn't brilliant, but...
he wasn't.
He got you all captured.
Well, he decided that we ought to try doing this thing in the daytime. We could do twice as much, you know. And I was the guinea pig, and it didn't work.
So they got you. When what was the first thing that happened when they captured
everybody,
you?
Or just
how did they nail you when they captured you, the German troops?
All of a sudden I felt sort of a shock in my right shoulder and arm, and hit the dirt, and there was kind of blood all over the place. And actually the fellow with me was hit very badly. He was hit through the back and out the stomach, and he died a couple of hours later. But and then there was an American captain with me who lives here in New York, a very fine doctor. Who was shot in the foot, and took a...
Makes it
turned
so
out-
tough to escape when
well,
they
it
shoot
seemed-
you in the foot like that.
Well, the funny thing about it was that it seemed like a nothing wound. You know, I was this really miserable, messy thing, you know, with an armful of Jello, you know, and all this. But his turned out to be a very troublesome thing that lasted much, much longer because those little bones down there are
Hard to
very
heal.
bad.
Well, when
It's
you
over
were
100 or something down there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
when you were
Yeah.
captured and the Germans had you, you tried to escape 3 times. You were unsuccessful. But how much of your father at this point was in you in terms of being the fighter, of being the guy who wasn't going to be held back? You're going to escape. You're going to, you know,
Probably
take the
too
risks.
much.
Well, I
This
want
is
to tell
all
you that when I
fantasy.
was lying there and these guys were deciding whether to come down and take me prisoner or give me the coup de grace, you know, I didn't think about doing anything vicious at all. I went,
Pacifist.
how best can I make friends with these guys right now? Really,
Yeah.
you know, that's.
Stay alive.
All right, then let's move a little bit forward in your life. After World War II, fortunately, everything works out okay. You're safe and sound. You spend some time in Havana, Cuba, with Papa Hemingway to blow off some steam because of the period. How did you and your dad and the people you were with in Havana after World War II blow off steam in Cuba?
Well, this is a
from
very
the
easy
gossip?
place.
Is this from the gossip section?
Yeah, you should know, actually.
The Daily Cuban Star will pick
Well,
up on this.
No,
Check your messes.
you know, Havana was one of the great sin towns of the world, you know, and you know, in the People's State now, so we can go back down there, but I'm afraid, you know, sin is going to be held in check for some time. And besides, we got it here. You
Yeah,
know?
we don't need to go out of the
But,
country to get sin anymore.
But I'd been in prison camp for 6 months and a day, and you know, the diet is down. You don't. I want to tell you, when you're in prison, you don't think about girls. You think about food. The minute you get the first meal, then you think about girls. But
The
food
next
is
thought
first,
that flashes
right?
into your
When I
mind.
made the movie, The Diamond Exchange, and that was a war movie.
Yeah.
That's what I thought about. The pleasure, the sensual pleasure, the only sensual pleasure any of us had was eating. The
Eating.
3 meals a day.
No. Yeah, it's a big
Yeah.
deal.
You were
know.
working that hard doing the
Yeah,
movie.
my old man wasn't with me. My mate wasn't with me. I was working hard all the time.
I used to say, reach
Staying
for your
alive,
mate
working.
instead of your plate.
Reach for your mate instead of your plate.
If you're
My
trying
wife
to
is-
control your eating. It's,
Yeah, not
No, that's
there.
a very. Yeah, I like
good
that
one.
idea.
we use that.
I may
but
try
anyway,
it. I need it. I need help.
so there you are. The question is, what did you do to blow off steam? You had your first meal. You started to think of women.
Do
you
I
went
have to tell you
Yeah.
in detail?
Not in gross detail, but in
Well,
fine detail.
I learned a great deal that I hadn't imagined even before, and it was great fun. But I did it to excess. Let's say that I did almost everything to excess. I think there was a big
revolutionary
necessity
fever,
for it.
fever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
on
think
there.
men watching now who are in the war, everybody can relate to that. When you're denied so much for so long, you have to compensate for it. That's how I feel.
I don't know if you have to overcompensate as much as I did, but it was great.
Okay.
It was nice to have had that in the background.
Jack,
When
let's-
Havana was in its heyday, was the
Yes, it was.
in that way in America was after the war?
Yeah.
That's probably why.
why did your father like Havana so much?
Well, Havana was kind of an attractive
Cuba.
town, but what he liked was Cuba. And
Yeah.
he liked, the country was great. It was a place where he lived, 15 miles out of town, and Havana was one side of the triangle. He was up on a hill, and the other side of the triangle was this little town of Kohima, where he kept his boat. And it was a
you
super
can see the
place.
sea from the house?
Oh, yeah, yes, you
good
could.
day, on a
Yeah,
clear
on a
day.
good day.
Let's leave. Get the plane. Let's go down and check it out. We'll be back right after this. I want to take a look at islands in the stream, too. Well, it was Jack Hemingway on the left and his father, Ernest Hemingway, on the right. We continue a conversation. I found myself identifying, Jack, with one aspect of your life. You were very successful on Wall Street for quite a while, but you made a decision.
I think that's an exaggeration.
You weren't very successful?
No, I was just kind of a family stockbroker.
See, these are the things that I get this information. They told me you earned millions on Wall Street. No, really. They said yesterday, he earned millions on Wall Street. Then he left it all and went to Ohio.
It sounds good.
I mean,
Except it's-
Idaho.
No, that's better. I did leave it all. I'd go to Idaho.
Just tell us about the decision to leave whatever formal occupation one has to go hang out in Idaho. Why you did it?
Well, I've got to be brutally honest.
Sure.
Okay. Brutally honest, for the first time in my life I could afford to leave the brokerage business. And it
why
wasn't
they
because
said
I made a
millions.
fortune in it, you know.
You
Because
made enough that you didn't have to do it anymore.
Right, and I moved out there. I'd always wanted to. My wife and I met there after World War II, and she very wisely told me, said, Jack, I want to go back just as much as you, but we're not going back until we can afford not to live on the local economy, you know, to be dependent on the tourist trade the way you are in a ski resort place. So we made it. I got back there and got the house built, worrying about how I was going to pay for the house. I had a heart attack, you know. That sort of set things up beautifully.
You actually did?
Yeah,
I
I did. You know, I was a little overweight and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, because you look like you're in
No,
good
well,
shape
I'm in
now.
better shape now than I was then.
Well, I guess fly fishing probably,
But
fly casting.
well, what happened was, you know, as a result of the heart attack, I became a fish and game commissioner. I was sort of available to do anything, and started writing, you know, a weekly column and a monthly column there, and so I've really lived all the things that I wanted to do all my life. I finally got to do them and even get paid. You know,
Yeah,
it's
how
been
did the
nice.
heart
You
attack?
live on a reserve, like a game preserve?
Uh,
It is sort of
well, it
a
isn't-
fishing game.
Well, we have, you know, in America we have things like Yellowstone Park, and we have certain, but the game preserve system doesn't. We found really essentially doesn't work from a game management point of view, because you get imbalances due to the fact that we wiped out some of the species in the past that would have helped keep the balance right.
Yeah, and
but we
continuing to
we
do
have
so.
great hunting out there, and we have you know, fabulous fishing.
Jack, I want to take a moment to get into one of the reasons why you flew all the way up here to be with us today, because
Okay,
you're interested in telling people about a movie called Islands in the Stream,
Right.
based on your father's, essentially the last book that was published.
Right.
Was it
It was a posthumous.
Yeah. We have a scene here from the movie, which is the children saying goodbye to George C. Scott, who plays the father, and really seems to play a Hemingway-type character in this film.
Well, I think very, very definitely. I think my father modeled the character of Tom Hudson, you know, on himself. He made him a painter, but he put him in a place that he knew well. He put him in a situation with three boys who resemble an age disparity, about my kid brothers and myself, so that but you know, he changed the facts and stuff. He did something which I find unforgivable.
What's that?
Well, he bumped us all off in the book.
Killed the kids?
Yeah, terrible.
All right, let's look at the clip. Before we look at the clip, we're going to see George C. Scott. Does George C. Scott remind you at all of your father in this portrayal?
In one way, except that I find lacking the humor that I told you about before.
All right,
You know,
let's
with-
roll the
with,
film and take a look. This is
Most people don't
Islands
know
in the
that.
Stream.
No.
George C. Scott, and we thank Paramount Pictures.
Okay, boys.
I guess we better get on board, huh?
Guess we better. Had a swell time. Goodbye, Papa.
You okay, Andrew? Can't keep the plane waiting all day, you know.
Papa, can I stay with you? I don't want you to be all alone.
Well, be a good boy and take good care of your brother, okay? Bye, son.
Goodbye, Eddie. Bye.
Well, Tom,
Yeah. I'll see Mother in New York before I go. Is there anything you want me to tell her?
hello.
Right.
Good luck, kid.
That's Islands in the Stream, and we thank Paramount for that. Jack, something I found myself wondering about, I'm just going to ask you about it. I know that you have an answer. Your father committed suicide, and something as profound as that in anyone's life, for you as his son, you've had to answer the why he did it. How did you explain it to yourself?
Well, I mean, there's sort of easy things, ways to explain it, but I think that you know, anything like this is, you know, a necessity very, very complex. And I think that it is a question of health, and I think in this case of mental health. It's something we didn't used to talk about before.
And they must go together very closely.
But it is. I mean, and I suspect very much, you know, that there were some troubles, and he underwent some treatments, and he objected to the way the treatment. You know, they used to do electroshock therapy and this sort of thing. And I saw him about 5 or 6 months before he died, and you know, this enormous man, vibrant person, had sort of shrunken up and become small. You know, it's a thing that you often see in people. You see it if you see somebody dead, you know.
Really, I see it
and then
in
you see it in people
out.
before they're going to die, too. You know, it's kind of a
I
frightening
see it
thing.
in my own father. He was in New York last summer, and I got him a ticket to the Democratic Convention, and I gave him a ticket, and he and his friend were walking across the street, and I saw my father walking in, and I thought, gee, he's small now. You know, he's 72 years old. He was such a big, robust man. So that's what
when
you
you were
saw.
6.
And I saw this, but also he, I mean, it was just a thing. I think that now, probably, you know, we know that these things are caused by chemical imbalances, and they can be corrected, you know. And that would have been such an easy thing, but it was just a little bit before the time that these things could be done.
Yeah. So you just apply your intelligence to understand. It's all you can do.
Yes, well, you know, I think that for anybody to either say that it was an act of cowardice or an act of courage would be incorrect. I think it was a thought process that was not logical. That really had not the basis that he is, you know, that he was capable of. I think that he himself would never have chosen 10 years before, under any circumstances, to do this.
Yeah. Jack, I appreciate your honesty and your directness on that, and because I think people loved your father so much, and it's something that I know I've wondered about.
They either loved or hated him.
Yeah. Well, they were
Sometimes
enriched
both
by
at the
him.
same time, back
Greatly
and forth.
enriched, I think. Greatly
Sure.
enriched by him and his work.
It's a big
Let's
giver.
take a break and talk fishing when we come back, okay? We'll be back with Captain